Welcome to the Norwich Economic Podcast. This is the Working In series, and today we'll be talking to UEA alumni working in the consulting industry to hear more about their roles and what their journeys were to get here. With us here we have Rebecca Morris, who is a consultant at Deloitte, and Alex Lindsay, a senior consultant at Capco. Welcome, Rebecca. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, Aletta. Hi, Kasali.
Hi, could you tell us more about who you are, where you work, and what your role is?
Yes, definitely. My name is Rebecca, and I was at UEA from 2014 to 2017. I did the BSc Economics degree and graduated in the summer of 2017, and had a couple of months, went to some holidays, which was nice. And then in the October of that year, I started a grad scheme, and that was doing audit and assurance, which, is not the most fun, as it sounds on the tin, at Deloitte. So I guess just to kind of backstep from how I got to that point, when I was in my second year of university, I did an internship at the Government Economic Service. So I did an internship in HM Treasury, which was really economic based, and really, really enjoyed it. And at the end of my degree, I had an offer to go onto the grad scheme at the GES, the Government Economic Service, or go and do the audit and assurance, where you get the accounting ACA qualification. And I spoke to my lecturers at UEA, who they did kind of advise actually to go down the Government Economic Service route, because the job probably would have been more interesting day to day. But I was really keen to kind of get another qualification, because the ACA is I think it's seen as the same level as masters. So that was kind of my motivation to going into audit and assurance, not so much for the audit part, but was keen to get another qualification. And it's one, obviously you don't pay for yourself, the company you work for pays for it. So it's like a lot of education for another couple of years. So.
Wow. And did you get the internships through UEA, or was that more a self-focused quest to find something?
So the internships, I don't think they were through UEA, but I was really engaged with the career service at UEA. So I was probably one of those annoying keen beans that I hadn't really had any professional work experience prior to university. So it was a bit of an unknown for me. And so I went to lots of career events with the UEA career service, and often they would have people come in from different industries to come and talk. So yeah, that's sort of how I found out about it, I think, from memory. And I did apply for ACA internships, so at PwC and another one, and I got rejected. I didn't pass the assessment centres, but I did manage to get success with the Government Economic Service one. So.
Today we also have Alex Lindsay with us. And Alex, can you tell us more about who you are, where you work, what your role is?
Sure. So I'm Alex Lindsay. I graduated from UEA having completed economics in 2017, and I joined Capco. So Capco is a global management, technology and business consultancy, and I've been here for the last 5 years. The role is kind of multiple, across the financial services sector, mainly specializing in implementing technology, transformation, but also more recently some strategy consulting as well.
Can you tell us more about the team you work in?
Sure. So I focus on capital markets. So this really looks at kind of market infrastructure. So at the moment it's at a inter-dealer broker. So it kind of sits between two dealer clients, and I'm helping build platforms to allow different dealers to trade with each other, particularly in bonds.
Oh.
I kind of am a single consultant on this project, so I work directly with my clients, who's kind of the head of credit and the CEO.
Very interesting. And how long have you been at Capco?
So I actually graduated from UEA on a Friday, and I joined Capco on the following Monday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've been at Capco now for 5 years. Well, 4 years, I think 8 months or something.
Wow. And so were you interning with them while you were at UEA, or how did you get the connection to them?
No, I managed to get an offer from them during my third year.
Okay.
And that was to join what they call the ATP, so it's the Associate Training Program. So you're kind of given 3 weeks. It's quite intensive. Everyone's in a basement, and they kind of get experts from all the different fields to kind of talk about financial services. And then you're kind of chucked onto a project. It's kind of a baptism of fire. And you kind of just start giving value to your clients in any ways you can. And I kind of promoted my way through the ranks from kind of the associate to consultant to currently being a senior consultant.
That's awesome. So was this your first professional role, or were you working before university? Or how did your
I was fortunate. I was fortunate enough to receive internships while at UEA.
Okay.
So I interned at The Economist. I interned at Investec, which is a specialist bank. And I also got a role as an equities analyst at a hedge fund in Switzerland.
Oh, that must have been very interesting.
Yeah, all really helpful roles. And I don't think I would have got kind of the consultancy role without having that kind of broad perspective of financial services. But also I was, while at UEA, I was editor of the Norwich Economic Papers.
You were? Okay, so you were one
exactly.
of us.
Yeah. And that definitely helped because it kind of gave me a great example to show that I was kind of good at handling responsibility, managing a team, meeting deadlines, kind of publishing with an eye for detail, managing kind of the essay competition. And all of those things were super helpful to kind of display to an employer that I was the man for the job.
Okay. And so you were talking about internships while at UEA. Did you secure those internships through UEA, through the Career Centre, or was that your own initiative?
I definitely used the Career Centre a lot, mainly for kind of reviewing CVs and cover letters. And I did get Capco through the Career Centre. There was kind of a talk where Capco came and presented and kind of talked about how they had built the app for NatWest, which is called Metal, which was for kind of small banks. But the internships themselves kind of leading up to it, I kind of found independently.
So before we started the interview, Rebecca was telling me all about that, how she chose economics. And so Rebecca, can you tell us more what led you to this career and specifically to Deloitte, where you now are?
Yeah, sure. So as I wanted to do the ACA, it's kind of the obvious choice to go, well, if you can get to a Big Four, I think that's a really great place to do it because you do get a lot of training, a lot of college, and obviously it's a qualification equivalent to a master's. And I also think then, so I did that for 3 years, and kind of being in a big organization, you have a lot more opportunity to transfer because audit is not for everyone for life. So I was happy to do my 3 years and get qualified. And I was in the insurance sector. And so through those 3 years, kind of realized I really liked insurance, but audit wasn't necessarily what I wanted to specialize in. And so being at like a big firm, which you might also get opportunities at a smaller firm, I was able to transfer internally to consulting. So moved over to consulting a year ago now. And kind of starting fresh again in my career because I moved into a strategy, data and analytics team. Although it was still in the insurance sector, I didn't have any like data knowledge. My knowledge was like purely financial accounting. So I spent the last year doing that. So I think having graduated from economics, you didn't necessarily know what I wanted to go into, but I always just had like one step ahead. So my next step was ACA qualification, and at that point I never would have thought I could end up in data and analytics team and doing like strategy consulting. So I think as much as nice as it is to have a 5-year plan, I think just kind of knowing your next step and what your next interest is in, that's for me and as far as I could go. So.
Were you part of any mentorship programs? Is that something that Deloitte offers, or how was your process of transferring from the one department to another? That sounds. Yeah.
Actually, just on mentorship, I was a part of the UEA mentorship program. So I don't know if that still exists, but when I was there, I was I think I got paired with someone who works at the Bank of England, and we've actually kept in contact since my leaving UEA, and they gave me kind of good advice on careers and review my CV and things like that. So if that's still offered at UEA, that was something I undertook. And then at Deloitte itself, I think there's you're more likely to have a coach rather than a mentor, but I think you have to be they put the kind of onus on you to be quite proactive in reaching out. But if you reach out, people are always more than willing to kind of help you. But
Alex, can I ask you the same question? What inspired you to choose this kind of career? Did you know you wanted to be this from a young age, or was it like an aha moment?
I think I always had an interest in kind of financial markets, mainly probably because my dad just always kind of funneled me that route. And when I started kind of some time at the hedge fund, I was lucky enough to go on a trip to Milan where we interviewed some of the CEOs and CFOs there. And I kind of was fascinated talking to them, learning about their kind of business problems, but then also found it slightly weird that you kind of learn about them and then just walk off and make an investment decision. So my plan was to kind of try consulting, see what I thought, and then decide between kind of the investment side or the consulting side. And in all honesty, I just never left once I kind of joined this consulting role. And maybe that's kind of because I ran out of times to kind of do internships, and I kind of enjoyed the variety of consulting enough that I've stayed in it. But I definitely, from a young kid, I think I wasn't looking at consulting. But maybe it was the same reason which I chose economics, which was I kind of always liked that breadth and flexibility, which it gave me further down the line, which kept me kind of on that road.
And so you were mentioning before that there are like different teams in the organization that focus on different parts of the market. And so I was wondering, were you before or in this sector focusing on a different financial market? And if so, what were maybe the main economic features that applied there compared to where you are now?
So Capco kind of splits its departments into kind of engineering, which is really kind of actual coding, kind of new platforms or functionalities for banks. You have kind of technology, which is more about kind of implementing frameworks and target operating models for the processes within kind of like the technology department. And then we kind of have like a data practice. And all of those three I've kind of had exposures to throughout my time at Capco. And I'd say I'm probably surprised by how little economics I've actually used in all of them. I think fundamentally I've learned skills by doing economics, and that's kind of reading kind of complex journals. And when I first joined, I had to kind of do a regulatory project, and I think that massively helped. I definitely had kind of times where I had to manage large data sets. So I had a stint at Morgan Stanley, and I wouldn't have been able to kind of handle that volume of data without having done kind of some of the modules, advanced economic analysis, I think it was, as one of the courses at UEA.
You still use data? I know that's one of the programs that we all learn. Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't have to use data.
Okay.
Use UltraX instead. But it's kind of similar concepts, and it kind of, I'd say an economics degree gave me a foundation that meant I wasn't intimidated when I was kind of thrown large volumes of data. Although actually, interestingly, the reason I was late for this podcast is we're just having a conversation now with the head of credit, who's my client, and he was looking at if we increase the price which we give to clients for each of the trades they do, what percentage of clients would actually stop trading with us? And now you've kind of said it, it actually is kind of, you're looking at the elasticity of a demand. And I'd say it's probably one of the rare times I do use economics that allows you to conceptualize them. And we were actually kind of looking at different scenarios because we've kind of been doing these pilot phases, charging clients different amounts over a period of time, and then looking at what the trade volumes were. To then figure out how many trades we missed out on or how many trades we captured, depending if we brought the price down or price up. So yeah, coincidentally, I have actually used economics today.
That's very cool. What about you, Rebecca? Are there some economic concepts or methods that really stand out that you use either on every day or that was really unique in a specific scenario?
I think in audit, from like a macroeconomic perspective, you're having to consider those kind of key factors almost every day on an audit, because the two purposes of an audit are, I guess, one is their financial information correct at that point in time, and the second one is that company going to survive for the next 12 months or for the next financial year? And to make that decision, you have to incorporate, a wide range of factors. So COVID-19 was obviously a massive impact, and that when it was kind of came to fruition that it was going to have a big impact globally, Deloitte paused signing any audits for a month, for 2 weeks, whilst it kind of gathered the information it needed to I guess decide what evidence it needed to be comfortable to sign off on the audit of that company. So in those 2 weeks, we kind of found out more information, like more evaluation that we had to do of the company before you could sign off the audit and say it's can continue for the next 12 months. So in that respect, it came in quite important, and kind of any planning process you do for starting an audit, you have to consider a lot of economic factors, so things like Brexit and everything like that. So from a macroeconomic perspective, really is a massive part of the audit process. I think one more specific example would be when I was on an audit for a house building insurance company, and one of their big risk items or liabilities was high-rise buildings, insuring high-rise buildings post-Grenfell. And that was really interesting because of the impact of COVID-19 then on kind of building supplies, and the impact on the kind of recessionary impact. So obviously in 2008, there was a massive impact on the construction industry at that time. And there was the big concern right at the start of the pandemic. We didn't know what way it was going to go. Obviously, it has fared better than everyone thought. But that was another time that kind of assessing economic factors was really important.
Which data analytic tools do you use on an everyday basis?
So I didn't really use hardly any in audit. We started to use Power BI a bit more, but at a very low level. Today, I'm in a data and analytics role, so cloud platforms, Microsoft Azure, Snowflake, SQL, use those quite a lot, and Power BI as well. But as a consultant, you're in PowerPoint and you're in Excel every day, so that doesn't really go away.
Yeah. Alex, can you tell us about what the most important thing is that you learned in your current position, either be that in analytics or in how to deal with people? Or
yeah, I'd say the most important thing in general is client expectation setting. I think everything you always deliver in a workplace is always benchmarked against what they expected or what you promised. So as long as you kind of make sure that you communicate well, understand what you're meant to do, and kind of give back something which is in line with that or exceeds that, I think you'll always succeed in whatever career you do. So I'd say hands down, it's definitely a soft skill. And I think at university, you never really have to handle kind of expectation setting, because it's kind of, you go into an exam, you set the exam, you leave the exam. It's kind of done on a lot more objective framework, but in the real world, it's definitely all subjective.
Rebecca, is there anything you wish you knew before entering this position at Deloitte?
Alex, sounds like you probably had a clear mindset of where you wanted to go. I was probably the opposite. I didn't, like I said, I was like, okay, well, I know I didn't want to close any doors. So kind of like similar to the breadth of economics, I was like, I'll do the ACA because I don't know what I want to do in 5 years. So hopefully that won't limit me too much. And then secondly, and then moving into a data role, no, something I never thought I would end up doing. So I think, I guess just like, what I wish I'd known before, I think more just like having confidence in what you're doing. So never ruling anything out. I think when I started, I thought, I'm never going to get through the ACA. And then it was like, oh, will I even ever be good in data? But this is just kind of like how my person works. And I think if you've got the right attitude to learn, That's like the most important thing. Like you don't have to be the most technical person in the room. You don't have to have got, you know, the highest marks on the exams. But if you're willing to learn and you're consistent with what you do, you will progress and you will be successful in your role. So
yeah, I definitely agree with what you said. I think in some ways you have to pretend you know which route you're headed, because then at least that way you have kind of a direction. And then you can start kind of like pedaling in a direction. You talk to people, you say where you're wanting to head. People kind of give you advice, give you contacts, and it kind of opens doors. Whereas if someone kind of says, oh, so what do you want to do? And you say, I don't know, it actually means they can't really help you. So that's probably like one of the ways just to kind of initiate conversations, and people will justify it in different ways, which is like, oh, I manifested this direction, or kind of, oh, it's focus, or oh, I had this vision. And I'm probably all have some credibility, but I think you don't have to be 100% bought in to the end goal. But by having some direction, at least focuses your efforts and means that you kind of start to build up the skills, which are actually a lot more transferable than you kind of realize.
Great. I was just going to say, yeah, talking to people is probably one of the most important things as well. So being able to move over from audit to consulting from about the first year in audit, I knew I didn't want to stay in it. And from that point on, I was reaching out to people I knew or trying to build that network in consulting so that when I wanted to make the move, I had people who could support me and do that. And also just give me advice on what the day-to-day role is like and whether I would actually even like it. But also the same at UEA. So going to the career events and just finding out about what people's roots were and where they would kind of change or go back and just do something differently, or where they wish they'd explored more. I think you learn, so much just from talking to people and building the network.
Yeah, I think you'll always be surprised by how open people are. Like already this week, I contacted a partner from BCG, and he was happy to have a chat. Talked to someone from Oliver Wyman, and actually everyone's very happy to talk about their careers, talk about the journeys they've been on. And it kind of opens up your own horizons. I think that's one of the main things. It's very easy when you enter a workplace to kind of join the rat race where you're all aiming for that next promotion. But actually, when you take a step back, you can kind of realize what your true options are, and it gives you more optionality. And I think the surprising thing is kind of when you find something which you enjoy, you actually find you have more energy to do it. And then you're actually more likely to do well at it. The sad thing is when you kind of don't like what you're doing, therefore you find it really draining, and therefore you don't do well at it, and therefore you don't get promoted, which then means you hate it even more. And I think it's like you kind of have to break any cycles whenever you realize you don't like something, and don't think that being the hero and trolling around in your career is a good one. Make sure you stay engaged, make sure you enjoy what you're doing, and actually you'll be much better for it, both kind of mental health wise, but also in terms of your actual performance.
What advice would you have for recent graduates or people who are graduating in the near future?
Probably my biggest one is do the GMAT. When you leave university, you're going to be the best will be at maths, at reading complex journals, at all of that. Once you enter the workplace, you excel's your friend and also your biggest enemy. You kind of stop doing mental maths, you just build formulas instead. And the GMAT will open so many doors for you. I think it's valid for kind of 5 years. So if you wanted to do an MBA or a master's, it kind of allows you just to kind of apply without having to kind of go back into the student mindset and revise and kind of get that score. Also talking to BCG yesterday, one of the things he said is if you want to apply, you can also just give us that score. And one of the things I experienced is BCG doesn't view UEA as a target university. But if you do well on the GMAT, that's a standardized test, which they will be able to benchmark you against and really respect. So, I mean, I regret not doing it. And I definitely give that advice.
My advice would probably be, I think I put so much pressure on myself to get the job that I wanted on day one, and kind of meeting up with people who I went to uni with later down the line who have dipped their toe in something and weren't afraid to be actually, what, that wasn't for me, or changing their mind. I think you are still so early on in your career, and just be ready to, or don't be afraid of trying something you maybe don't think is suited to you, or giving something a go, maybe what your skills aren't at. So I thought I was afraid of data and I never wanted to do it. And now I was like, oh, I actually could do it. But I held back from doing that for so long because I just didn't think that I'd be very good at it. And I was almost like afraid to try it. And yeah, like even kind of meeting friends who have taken on different careers and now at this age have just joined grad schemes. Like there's kind of no harm in trying, different routes, and not everyone's good in that. I mean, maybe a grad scheme is what you want to get on when you first go out of university, but I think comparison is the thief of joy, and just really go with kind of like what you enjoy and what energizes you, and use that time to make the mistakes and learn the lessons. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, I totally second that. I spoke to the man who founded Pret, and kind of one of the things he said to me was like, you might not know what you want to do, but at least cross things off. And I think that's very true. Our careers are going to be longer than probably any previous generation. So make sure you pick one well. Don't feel like you need to like rush into one and kind of get ahead. Like actually taking your time, building up kind of a greater like horizon and understanding of all the different jobs that are out there is time well spent, and don't view it as kind of wasted time. Because I know that like I didn't even know 50% of the jobs, maybe even 100% of the jobs I've done actually existed when I was at university.
Yeah, that is something to keep in mind. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Rebecca and Alex, and helping students at UEA think further about how to get from where we are now, as students, to working professionals as yourselves. It was a pleasure talking to you.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks so much for organising. We're always happy to help students, so feel free to reach out.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.